After Bai Baoshan was released from prison, he dug out all the bullets and brought them back to Beijing. Soon, behind the stone scenery mouth in Xushui, Beijing, a tall man in a green military uniform frequently appeared on a small hill. He exercised by running on the mountain path, lurked around some military institutions, carefully observed, and cautiously chose his targets. On the night of March 31, 1996, Bai Baoshan climbed over the wall into the arsenal. Initially, he didn't plan to take action that day, just to gather information. During the reconnaissance, he encountered an opportunity. A sentry on duty felt unwell and was squatting on the ground vomiting. Bai Baoshan immediately picked up a thick iron rod from the ground and brutally struck the sentry. After the sentry fainted, Bai Baoshan quickly took away 5 or 6 Type 56 rifles from him, opened a small side door on the large iron gate, and escaped from the arsenal. After successfully crossing the wall, Bai Baoshan became calm. He realized that killing that security guard wouldn't solve his ID problem and might expose him. So, he decided to do other things first. Due to the large size of the Type 56 rifles, not easy to conceal, Bai Baoshan dug a hole on a nearby hill and buried the rifles. Considering the inconvenience of carrying a long gun, Bai Baoshan planned to acquire a short gun. On the night of April 7, he took action again, attacking the guard station of the Armored Forces headquarters and shooting and injuring a sentry named Yu Qiming. However, he didn't know that the sentry had an empty gun holster, and there was no gun inside. Late at night on April 8, Bai Baoshan hired a black car, attempting to transfer the firearms to continue his criminal activities. However, as he approached a crossroads near the Xushui building in the Sichuan High-Tech Park, he suddenly encountered a patrol car from the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit. Bai Baoshan sensed trouble, jumped out of the car, and fired 9 shots, injuring 3 patrol police officers. After this encounter, Bai Baoshan stopped his jealous actions in the Sichuan area, but he didn't give up on the goal of obtaining a short gun. Bai Baoshan's second sister worked at a farm in Fengshan County. On his way to visit his second sister, he accidentally discovered that sentries at the 81 shooting range were carrying shotguns. Therefore, in the early morning of April 22, he committed the crime again, killing the 81 shooting range sentry Zhao Changwen and robbing the pistol, gun holster, and empty ammunition vest. Bai Baoshan carried out consecutive acts of vigilantism, killing 1 sentry and injuring 6 military police officers, an unprecedented event since the founding of the country. Central leadership instructed the Beijing Public Security Bureau to solve the case as soon as possible. Therefore, the Beijing police immediately formed a joint task force led by Director Zhang Liangji, with close cooperation between various police forces and departments, dedicating themselves to intense investigative work. Through on-site investigations of cases 407, 408, and 422, the police confirmed that the culprit had advanced design skills, was familiar with military weapons, seemed to have received professional military training, and might be a criminal targeted by the police. He may have a sense of service or have received military training, with experience in handling military weapons, and his methods were extremely brutal. The military Type 56 semi-automatic rifles used in the 3 shootings were the same as those seized at the Gaojing power plant. The types of firearms were the same, and the bullets fired at both scenes came from the same rifle, with the cartridge bottoms marked as 75 to 81. Thus, it was evident that the culprit had a relatively singular method of obtaining bullets. Next, with the assistance of the weapons department, the task force traced the production date and deployment area of this batch of bullets, finally unraveling the origins and destinations of these bullets. It turned out that this batch of bullets was manufactured by a certain ordnance factory in Hunan in the later stages, primarily allocated to the Nanjing military region and Lanzhou military region. However, the bullets allocated to the Nanjing military region had not been issued to the troops, and those allocated to the Lanzhou military region were mainly distributed to areas such as Aksu, Turpan, Shihizi, and Khitan in Xinjiang. The task force immediately dispatched personnel to Xinjiang to investigate the management of bullets. However, due to the large quantity and widespread distribution of bullets, along with the extended issuance period, it was not possible to further narrow down the scope of the investigation. Meanwhile, through repeated analysis of the conversation between the black car driver and the gang members by language experts, it was determined that they were using the local Beijing dialect rather than Mandarin, which held significant importance. This led to the conclusion that the suspects were likely from Beijing, not from other regions. The task force also believed that the suspects' activities and residence were within the Xushui district, with a key area possibly near the 337 bus terminal. The investigation scope was clarified, and a decision was made to conduct a thorough search within a 5-kilometer radius around the 337 bus terminal. However, after an extensive period of work, no valuable investigative leads were found. Just as the police were intensifying their efforts, Bai Baoshan suddenly ceased some activities in Beijing and shifted his focus elsewhere. Recalling scenes from his childhood in his hometown of Xushui, he remembered there was a military factory near the village. Therefore, he decided to return to his hometown for a visit. At 2 p.m., the car arrived in Xushui County. After getting off, Bai Baoshan aimlessly wandered, walking about 3 or 4 miles outside the county and discovering that a sentry in a military camp was carrying a foldable automatic rifle. This caught his attention as he had never seen such a gun before. The gun was short, with a foldable metal stock, making it very convenient to carry. In an instant, Bai Baoshan decided to rob the sentry of his automatic rifle. From the afternoon to the evening, Bai Baoshan did not leave the vicinity of the military camp. He selected a hiding spot and arranged positions, determining the entry and exit routes. Bai Baoshan had an astonishing memory for terrain, and once he was confident that everything was arranged properly, he returned to Beijing that night. The next day, it started raining in Beijing and continued for 3 days. Bai Baoshan felt it was time to transport the weapons. Due to concerns about the danger of long-distance transportation of rifles, Bai Baoshan wrapped the semi-automatic rifle in plastic and tied it to the car's main beam. He then rode a bicycle to Liangshan town, where he caught a bus to Baoding. To guard against unexpected events, he loaded the gun with bullets, and the remaining bullets were wrapped around his body. Upon reaching the designated storage location, near a cement factory and the intersection of an orchard near the military camp, he dug a hole and buried the rifle wrapped in plastic, while the bullets were buried in another location. All preparations were complete. 2 days later, Bai Baoshan returned to Xushui. He first had something to eat on the street, waiting for the sky to completely darken. Then, he went to the location where he had hidden the gun. Sitting in the orchard, he wiped the wall first and then polished each bullet. During this process, he wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints on the bullets. He loaded the gun chamber with bullets, and the remaining bullets were wrapped around his body. Under the cover of night, following the pre-planned route, he quietly approached the designated shooting point, less than 10 meters from the sentry. He then silently lay on the ground, maintaining the position for over 4 hours until around midnight. At this time, there were 3 sentries on duty, and Bai Baoshan calculated the time, knowing that the shift change was imminent. In general situations, there are usually 2 sentries standing on the outer platform, and another sentry at the entrance gate, with the platform being 15 meters away from the gate. Now, one of the sentries came out and stood in front of the platform, and Bai Baoshan felt it was time to take action. He first aimed at the sentry with his back to him and fired a shot, causing the sentry to fall motionless. Then, he turned the gun and fired another shot at the sentry facing away from him, who also remained still. As he was about to shoot at the third sentry, he noticed that the sentry had crawled into the gate. He aimed at that person and fired 3 shots, none of which hit. At this point, the alarm sounded inside the military camp, but no one immediately came out. Carrying 2 guns on his back, Bai Baoshan crouched and retraced his steps, running back along the planned route towards the west. After crossing National Highway 107 and passing a gas station, it was too dark for anyone to notice. The speed slowed down when he crossed the railway. Then, he walked towards Xushui railway station along the railway. As dawn approached, he found an abandoned clay kiln by the railway. He dug 2 holes in the kiln ground, burying both guns and bullets separately, marking them. He then took off his military green clothes and rubber shoes, changed into a round-neck shirt, buried the shoes and clothes in a muddy pond. Finally, he concealed himself in the open-air clay kiln. It wasn't until 8 a.m. the next morning that Bai Baoshan emerged from the old brick kiln. By this time, he had transformed, wearing a round-necked shirt and large shorts, empty-handed, carrying only a small bag. He crossed the railway and flagged down a long-distance bus heading to Beijing on the highway. On July 28, the day Bai Baoshan returned to Beijing, the Beijing Military Region Security Bureau suggested merging the case with the Beijing incidents, as they were very familiar with the Beijing case. Contact was made between Hebei Provincial Public Security Department and Beijing Municipal Public Security Bureau, and physical evidence samples were sent. In just one day, the Xushui attack on sentries and gun robbery case was merged with 4 cases that occurred in Beijing. The consistency of the cases was evident: a single perpetrator, possession of firearms, similar modus operandi, and consistent targets and objectives. Through technical identification, the firearm used by the suspect in the Xushui 727 case matched the one stolen in the Beijing 331 case, as well as the firearms used in the 407, 408, and 422 cases, expanding the police's perspective and providing more physical evidence clues. The footprints left in the orchard gave the police a basis for simulating the suspect's height, age, and appearance. At this point, Bai Baoshan still felt the inconvenience of not having a handgun, and coincidentally, his army girlfriend Xie Zongfen mentioned that her brother-in-law worked at a military factory in Sichuan. This caught Bai Baoshan's attention, and he decided to get another handgun in Sichuan. Although he couldn't commit crimes in Beijing or Xushui in the near future, he could head to Sichuan in hopes of achieving his goal there. However, this operation left him disappointed, and 10 days later, he and Xie Zongfen returned to Beijing together.